Hi, I'm Hannah Wallace and welcome to EBAday 2021. Kindly calling into our virtual studio today is Mircea Romantan, Regional Account Manager for Montran. So Mircea, thank you very much for calling in today.
Hi Hannah, thanks. Great to be here.
Good to have you on. Today we're discussing ISO 20022, but before we do, it'd be great if you could kick things off and tell us a bit about Montran.
Montran is a premier solutions provider in the payments market. We know payments very well. We've been doing payment solutions since 1979, when we are currently servicing more than 70 countries' critical payment infrastructure and more than 100 commercial banks with various solutions. We have been a proud SWIFT partner since the 1980s. And thus, we've been at the forefront of standardization, with our solution always being compliant with the latest SWIFT standards. And this is also especially true of ISO 20022, as we started offering ISO native solutions for some time now.
All right, that's brilliant. So considering your experience and global footprint in the payments ecosystem, perhaps you could tell us a bit about where we're up to with ISO 20022 today.
Well, on this topic, the European Union was pioneering ISO migration ever since 2008, when the SEPA standards were agreed to be used across the continent for cross-border payments initially, right? So Montran delivered the fully SEPA compliant payment hub to a very large European bank in just under a year from when the SEPA specifications were set in stone, and that was 2009. And this was for us, it was a great project that started Montran's ISO 20022 push in other regions outside the EU. And from that point onwards, most of our, for example, ACH clearinghouse implementations worldwide were based on SEPA -ISO, except of course for the US market and the neighbors that still relied heavily on NACHA. Right? Fast forward in time a little bit, and in 2013, and that's already 8 years ago, Montran delivered a fully ISO compliant RTGS to one of the largest countries in the world, and achieved full integration and production capabilities in less than a year from project kickoff, right? That RTGS system is now one of the largest in terms of capacity worldwide, and we see ever-growing volumes and capabilities. Returning to present times, we believe we are now in a unique position to be able to service the entire payment ecosystem with ISO-compliant solution. Market infrastructures, payment hubs, gateways, translator, everything that is needed.
All right. And from your experience in the market then and working with your clients, what options do financial institutions complying to the new ISO messaging standards, what options do they have? What do they need to consider in their own ISO migration plans? What about that?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because ISO migration happens everywhere, but not on the same timelines, right? So it all started a few years ago when SWIFT and the financial community agreed to migrate to ISO and be ready for testing in 2022, with 2025 being the last year when the older SWIFT empty format would be allowed on the SWIFT network, right? Coming back to timeline differences, for example, you have the European Union with the target to migration, whose deadline is November 2022. In the UK, CHAPS is supposed to migrate to ISO by 2023, with the FedRTGS and Faster Payments Canada following suit. So imagine that you're a financial institution operating in all of these markets, right? And that you would need to have separated migration plans. And that in itself can be a very challenging task, because migration affects a lot of internal systems, core banking, end user front ends, payment hubs, everything needs to be worked on. But luckily, there are solutions and options that can help smooth out this migration process. Related to migrating payment infrastructures to ISO, we've seen a number of different approaches in the market worldwide, right? And each option has its own implications on connected financial institutions. Take, for example, the big bang approach, where the market infrastructure operator requires that by a specific date, everybody be ready. Now, after that date, you usually have an intensive testing run, and after that, the operator flicks a switch, and then it's all ISO and migration complete, right? Now, we've seen that to be hard on commercial banks because they need to work within a very strict deadline and timeline, right? Core banking updates can be slower than expected. Problems can appear out of nowhere, and this all would, have impact on the market deadline for ISO adoption. That's why some regions and countries are going the hybrid route, coexistence of ISO 20022 with the older formats, in our case, Swift MT, right? This is all done for financial institutions to get a chance to catch up with their internal systems development, right? And this requires market infrastructure providers such as Montran to allow and be flexible in the simultaneous usage of the formats with or without conversion, right? And additionally, a lot of financial institutions would need new tools and solutions to help them out with migration. Format translator, new gateways, updated payment hubs. And we are very proud to be able to support financial institutions with whatever they need. And we've already done that with great success in some markets.
I know you've been doing some really interesting work at Montran. And finally, aside from being mandatory, what are the benefits then for financial institutions? And what can they expect from migrating to the ISO standard? What can they expect there?
Well, the main reason is that the ISO 20022 payments message, as defined in the 2000s, carries much richer information than Swift NT and other legacy formats, right? Information in ISO can also be grouped and structured logically. This results in increased interoperability. And this attribute of ISO doesn't only relate to interoperable routing of domestic and cross-border payments, but also across different types of ACH, real-time, and high-value payment systems. What's more, ISO supports additional functionalities, supports the non-Latin alphabet, and significantly improves on the speed of remittance processing. Now, what this means is that this also translates to new products being rolled out in the payment rails. Imagine receiving a direct debit that has an embedded invoice. This is impossible as of now, but with ISO, it'll be a reality. Imagine a bank rolling out a cash management solution based on universal communication formats, or imagine a corporate that is suddenly bank agnostic and moves away from bank service lock-in, allowing for seamless and very cost-effective porting of service to another financial institution. All in all, we believe and we see that ISO is considered by the industry to be a big enabler and will definitely make it easier to interconnect, improve data quality, enhance straight-through processing and reconciliation, improve automation, and bring reduced costs to the table. Then just factor in then greater ability to develop value-added services, provision of better operational resilience, and effective fraud detection and prevention measures.
All right, so there's a pretty positive view there. And I know you've touched on this a bit already, but it'd be great to hear about how these benefits are being passed down to their clients, especially the corporates. So what about that?
Once ISO support is out there in the market infrastructures and is enabled in these payment systems, we will see a very competitive scene where financial institutions will be rolling out new products based on the ISO capabilities. and roll this out to their customers. And we believe that this will be a very competitive scene in which customers will be lost and gained.
Brilliant. Well, Mircea, thank you so much for calling in and sharing your insights in ISO, and also really looking forward to having you as being a sponsor at EBAday 2021 this year. And hopefully we can catch up further down the line. But for now, we'll leave it there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah, for having me.